Hi everyone, welcome to Reboot Your Relationship. My name is Lee Honish. I am the producer of Perfect Blue Studio.
Nice.
I got it right today.
You got it right.
Welcome back. This is really episode 1. If you watched episode 0, that was sort of our boot show. Today is the real deal. Today we're talking about the drama triangle. This is really important. It's germane to me. It's germane to you. It's germane to Joe. This is Joe Whitcomb. Joe, first of all, tell everybody how they can get a hold of you.
310-560-0726, or you can contact me through email at joe@rebuildingconnection.com. But the best way is just to text me.
And just look at the bottom of the screen. If you're watching the video, look at the bottom of the screen. His phone number is available. Take advantage of that. As we have said on multiple shows, multiple times, take advantage of this information. If you're just on the podcast, please go check us out on Facebook. Just type in Reboot Your Relationship, okay? Or Joe Whitcomb. You'll eventually get to the right page. And if that's a problem, type in Lee Honish. I have 400 pages and produce a lot of shows. But you will definitely find this show. You'll be able to find this video. You can see the two of us. We're here to help you. So today we're talking about the drama triangle, okay? The reason I am putting myself in these precarious situations, for those of you who follow me, is because they're germane to me. In fact, today, as recent as today, putting myself in a situation that was ultimately designed for me to fail. So we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about the drama triangle. So first and foremost, what the hell is a drama triangle?
Well, if you don't mind, I'm going to get into we'll get into the drama triangle, but we have to have a little bit of some shared context and some language tools, understanding of some of the presuppositions that the Reboot Your Relationship and my trauma-informed relationship psychotherapy model is about. So the first thing, Lee, is that I really believe, that to heal the war in the world, we have to heal the war between the sexes, right? Would you agree? But to heal the war between the sexes, we have to heal the war within ourselves. And so that's going to be part of understanding the drama triangle. And the other part of that also is going to be that idea that we live in a reflective universe. So you get back what you put into it or what you are given, right? It's that whole karmic shuffle or the law of you reap what you sow, all that stuff. What we're putting out is, you could call it the law of attraction, whatever. Those are the things that we want to try to also understand is how that is imprinted in our DNA, in our relationship DNA. And also the idea here that we are the architect of our own evolutionary process and how we move through the world and how we make our choices in our relationships and how those relationships get, how they begin to emerge, how they co-create, all these things. Because the other stance is that I always take with the Reboot Your Relationship and a Rebuilding Connection platform, and what we're creating here is the idea that we can't heal alone. And what I mean by that, you can only be healed in the context of relationship.
Okay, I'm going to stop you right there. This was a debate earlier, yesterday. This was our debate, right?
Yeah.
So the common thing is, oh, you're out of a relationship. You should just get your shit together and be alone and learn how to be alone for a while. We've talked about this on episode 0, but it is DNA encodedly impossible for any living thing on the planet to be alone.
That's right. Right. I mean, because that idea of trying to heal something, because my bias has been, and we talked about this the other day, that, we are born into relationship for love, right? Connection, belonging, that sense of significance. We learned relationship through the context of relationship, all the good, the bad, the ugly stuff. We got wounded, right, in the context of relationship, betrayals, neglect, violence, trauma, whether you had a relationship where there was withholding of love, the very sustenance of life and the force of life and the power of life is through love, right? So because we've been wounded there, right, can only be healed in the context of a relationship. And that doesn't necessarily mean a romantic relationship. Yep. That's even you and I.
No, that's a great segue, which I was going to say. I think people take that as, oh, you need to be alone. And no, you need to go out and you need to be with your friends and you need to live life, right?
That's right.
Somebody recently examined my life that I had a long time relationship. Well, it looks like you're having fun. I've had great moments of my time alone, great times with great people.
Sure.
Because I'm at a point where it's about moment to moment, and whoever I'm with, I'm very direct with.
Right. That's being assertive, right? And that's a part of being kind of like we talked about the other day. We have our sword, as men, penetrate the world, penetrate our women, penetrate, to make that impact on ourselves and in the world. Because that sword is either going to leave a stain or a treasure. And so what are we leaving here? What's the stain? What's the treasure? So these are important things to be able to begin to think about, because the relationship, Lee, is the vehicle to our own transformation. Because let's say, I'm just going to give you an analogy, okay? So because a lot of times in a relationship, I always get into the drama triangle, and we start talking about the relationship, or the persecutor, the blamer, which are two one-up positions, or you have this one-down position of the victim, right? The powerless, helpless victim. So we all have this initiation point in that. We all have our stance. You have your stance in the relationship. I have my stance. And then we co-create this dance. It's like a vicious cycle. So let's say growing up, you are handed this very difficult calculus problem called life, love, relationship, connection, belonging, all these things. You're handed this trauma or some issue or something very challenging for you. So, but all you have to solve that calculus problem is what? You've only learned the 5th grade level fractions, decimals, integers, algebraic reasoning. So to survive, you found some strategy, way to solve that calculus problem. It worked for a moment for that little kid to survive. It worked, right? It worked, whether you hid out your room or you avoided or you turned to false solutions for a real need for connection or belonging. So maybe you turned to drugs, alcohol, pornography, whatever it was to get that little kid's needs met, right? So we learn to exchange that authentic, true part of us in exchange for a connection, a relationship, because that's food. So now we're adults and you're handed this same calculus problem, but we're still operating out of that wound and solving that problem with these 5th grade level fractions, decimals, integers, algebraic reasoning. And we're thinking, hey, this is going to work, right? So this is where developmentally in our relationships in life and love, our curriculum for life and love, where we get stuck, we get kind of frozen.
So is this ultimately why so many relationships just fail?
That is a big part of it, absolutely. Because again, you can't, relationships can only be healed in the context of a relationship, because now we get into these trauma loops or trauma bonds. So when you're in pain and hurt, and and then we start to blame the other person. So like for instance, so let's say your woman's freaking out.
Okay.
So what? Okay, she's freaking out. She's a deep, beautiful ocean. She's got deep currents, high tides, low tides, rip tides. She's got that, and she's going to be crashing on your beach, your earth, and your earth is trying to absorb that, take it in, feel it, experience it. She can kick snot, do whatever she needs to on me because I got big shoulders, a big back. I'm here to hold that space. But so what gets triggered in that moment, and we'll get into the drama triangle, is there's something happens, right? And you have a story about what just occurred, right? And we're adding, subtracting meaning, looking for evidence for there's something wrong with me. So what if she freaks out? Because we're not afraid necessarily. This is about fear, shame, all these other emotions that come into play. Because it's not that we're so much afraid of her reaction, even though she could be kind of that big, competent adult in the relationship. It's our reaction to her reaction that we're most afraid of. Our reaction to her reaction that we are afraid to confront and face. Because now I'm triggered into my own story about, hey, I'm not being good enough, I'm feeling falsely accused, misportrayed, hurt, wounded, go away. And then so the more, you feel like she's kind of, it's kind of like, think of it like, you have the homeostat, the thermostat set at 70 degrees. That's where intimacy, love, connection occurs, right? 70. So she may run a little hotter, like 75, 80, and intuitively we think we think, oh, to keep it at 70, I got to go a little cooler to 60. Now we're not closer together, we're actually further apart. We're now more distant, right? We're not closer. So you think, well, she's getting hot, so now we're at 90. She's going to 90 to get it to 70, and you're going to 50.
Well, that
She pursues, you withdraw, and you get in this whole drama triangle where the rescuer is trying to rescue, and right?
I'm giving too much away.
All right.
We need to go through the drama triangle, but I want to make this clear because it occurred to me.
Yeah.
And this is where games start.
This is where the game starts.
Right? I'm playing you on a passive-aggressive level, or I'm doing this to get the reaction I want because I don't want this taken away from me.
Right.
And this is where the cycle begins.
Well, it probably started way before that. It begins even before you meet that person. This didn't occur if you kind of were to track through all of your relationships, right? And you look at the loop,
threads.
You will find a common thread, and you go, wow, and again, we're solving for X,
right.
the X factor.
Right.
Never get beyond X, so why are we not getting beyond X, right? So then we go into a question like, oh, what's wrong with them? What's wrong with me? We're trying to solve X factor in this calculus problem, right? So we're asking, well, what am I supposed to learn here about myself and this person? And you fear, there's all this fear and frustration, fatigue, failure, all that, because we're trying to control the other person and the outcome, right? There's that control. So we try to solve for X, the X factor. We never get beyond that, asking that question. The hard thing, Lee, is there's this other part here, over here, but we're not willing to learn because we learned it in our childhood. It became part of our identity, our character, our personality is the 5th grade level fractions, decimals, integers, and algebraic reasoning. And to close the gap between here and there. And that's hard for us to see because those become patterns or fixed ways of being and how we learn to relate. Because here's the thing. Your conflicts are your, let's say, greatest teachers, right? They're here
yes.
by design. They're the very irritant that forms like a pearl in an oyster of our own growth and enlightenment and transformation. But it's hard to see the picture when you're in the frame. It's really hard to see that part of us that is also running a pattern, whether you're, an island, because you're saying, okay, I got to be an island, and my fear is I'm going to be enmeshed or powerless or helpless, or I'm going to lose my sense of sovereignty, my I. You're in that fixed kind of binary role, these binary positions of I'm a withdrawer, I'm an island, I don't need anyone, I'm okay. And then you have this other person over here who's kind of more of a wavy pursuer, initiator, and their fear might be running in this pattern around being abandoned or rejected. And so they protest, right? So if you're getting all those texts on the phone, right, they're like, what are they fighting for? What are they protesting?
Right. But this also creates the knotted tree syndrome as well.
Right.
Right, where ultimately you get into a position where you backed yourself so far of, I did this with him, I did this with him, I kept looking for this out of her, right? Mm-hmm. Until finally you're at a point where I got to cut this thing down to the stump.
Right.
And start over.
Start over, right.
Right.
Well, that's what it seems like, right? Because what you're missing is the third pole, because you're both in these fixed binary positions.
Okay.
And you both have
This is your segue.
This is a segue, getting into this third pole, the we, right? Because you're saying, well, I can heal on my own. Well, anyone can be on an island, and you don't have to deal with relationships and be, fully self. You can be fully, three ways, Lee. Three. One is I'm broken within, right? I'm broken here within myself. You're broken. Your person, your partner, we're all broken within, and that's hard to and that's part of understanding and owning our story of our transformation. So we're broken here, and I always say hurt people, and broken people break people, because that's what we do, and that's how we try to fix, because we keep reenacting the same exact pattern over and over again, but getting the same results over this. And that makes it very challenging for us to break through, because the question is, what am I not willing to learn here? And that's a very humbling thing to be able to do. It takes humility to face that. So in any conflict here, there are multiple dimensions occurring simultaneously that no one dimension can explain the entire conflict. So it's impossible because we keep looking at the other person, saying you're the problem, so if I'm pointing out an issue or something, hey, let's work on this, right? And then you're saying, well, you're the problem for pointing out the problem, and the way to deal with the problem, like you just said, cut the tree down, leave it a stump, raise it to the ground, leave, abandon it. And that's operating out of a trauma, right? So the only problem with the worst parts of you is our own refusal to accept them, to accept that. And if you're triggered, and I get triggered, we all get triggered into that vicious cycle. And it's always about you, and it's never about the other person. So in my book, Reboot Your Relationship, I talk about the power of one. It takes only one person to change the rhythm of that dance. And that's, and you don't just see these dynamics, these drama triangles happen in, intimate romantic relationships, but I'm sure in business, and you're in the real estate business and the fight, you see these patterns.
Certainly in the marketing business.
Marketing business, real estate, any
service or product, for sure.
Anytime you have this, so this isn't just good for you in your romantic relationships or your intimate partnerships or friendships. This is good for all of us to begin to understand how these patterns begin to emerge and how they begin to show up, and how do we find source solutions to getting to that. Because this person over here, you might find it very complex and hard, because again, there's many, many, many dimensions here that we have to begin to understand about human nature and what we're trying to solve in that moment. And it may have been something that, we're reenacting from our own family of origin. I see this in business and going to organizations all the time, and they're all running the same family of origin trauma and roles that they picked up and what they learned as children, and we continue thinking, well, the strategies worked. It worked then. I survived. But what worked for us as kids and as children, where we were wounded in some way in trauma, and we created very adaptive models and strategies and ways to survive and to work through things, and where we became very black and white, right? All or nothing, rigid, tight, inflexible. Tight in the body, relentless, angry, pissed, mad. And you feel all that occurring in your body, and all that stuff's occurring for you. And you get all this stuff happening, you're going, I'm not the problem, And the other person's saying, well, I'm not the problem. Because to move into what we're going to move into we're going to talk about the drama triangle, but also the empowerment triangle, where instead of being a rescuer or prosecutor or victim, how do we become coaches and challengers and co-creators to begin to understand how to break through these upper limit barriers to love and connection, belonging. And there's a great quote by Rumi, right? His quote is, our task is not to find love. It's here. It's connection, belonging. It's all here. It's all available and accessible to us. It's our barriers that we have set against it, against love, against the connection, against the solution, right? To find it. And that's really super important. So the other thing that we get into when we begin to understand these patterns and what patterns I'm running and what you're running, and we can begin to focus on sourcing solutions, because again, you're going to see the same pattern and problem in your work relationships, your love relationships, your children, all these things that begin to come up, and that creates frustration, and fatigue. So we want to be able to move out of that space. So,
moving forward, tell me about the drama triangle.
Well, there's three stances, right? You have two, one. So in any pattern relationships, and if you can kind of understand first, there's always going to be kind of this one, and a lot of times there's this one up, one down type of relationship. So Lee, when you look at this one up, one down pattern, what does that look like to you?
A ladder.
A ladder. Okay, it looks like a ladder, one up, one down. Okay.
And it also looks like part of a triangle.
Looks like part of a triangle. Okay, what else?
I don't know. What am I missing? I feel dumb.
You're not dumb. Well, you're a parent, right? right?
Right.
So you're a parent, and where's a child in the position?
Secondary.
You're here.
I'm the primary, they're the secondary.
Right. And so it looks like a parent-child relationship. Okay. How does that feel in a relationship when you're with someone that is also...
Where it's not side by side.
Right. So you have that one up, one down type of dynamic. Okay, what else does it look like? Teacher-student. You know, you got the rescuer victim, the perpetrator, the victim.
And I can say this, having had business partners and relationships where someone wasn't at my equal... How do I say this without sounding asshole?
It's like a Dancing with the Stars,
right?
Let's say you're like Dancing with the Stars and you have all the right moves and grooves and you got the moves down and you're in a partnership with somebody, okay, who either they're off drinking Kool-Aid, they don't want to be on the dance floor, is what you're saying, or they're taking a passive or aggressive stance, or they're saying, hey, I don't like your dance style, I'm not going to play with you or dance with you. Or they don't want to dance, or they just feel helpless and powerless to want to learn new dance moves, right? That's another one up, one down type of dynamic. And you're looking as a rescuer, you're going, hey, I see, you're feeling stuck here, and you try to help because as rescuers, heroes, you're altruistic. You have that altruistic desire to help. But it's coming from your own unmet need of feeling like, if I can make them okay, then I'm okay. And if they're not okay, then I'm not okay. That becomes kind of a codependent, vicious dance too, right? So you have the lover of the beloved, and you have the sinner, the saint. I mean, good night. There's so many patterns.
So I'm going to bring this up because...
Bring that into a relationship now. Oh my God.
I had time with you now.
Yeah.
Right? All my relationships I try to keep side by side. Even if it's you and me, if it's the person I want to go out with,
right?
I can't have an inequity, right? The only time it happens is possibly with my daughter, but I put her on a platform where she's next to me, where she can share her heart openly with me. And it's really tough for me because, again, we go back to the trauma thing that we discussed before of that's not the way I was raised. Right? You keep it all inside, you keep your shit together. Stuff it all down. And 30 some odd years of, I'll be honest, 40 years of doing that, right, has ultimately put me where I am today, where I have dysfunctional relationships with a hero complex, right? I'm wired to fix. I gotta fix it. It doesn't matter if it's you, it doesn't matter if it's my daughter. Gotta fix it.
Okay, so you gotta go with, so you're the initiator to fix things, right? No one wants to be fixed. No one wants to be fixed because you can be a coach, you can be a challenger, you can be a co-creator, but imagine the resentment we can all feel. And a lot of times people want that love and service and create that safe place, but as soon as because again, all these expectations that you're trying to manage, right? All these multiple dimensions that are going on. Right? Because expectations without a mutual consent and agreement creates this resentment because you have a superior, inferior, and this is just wired into the DNA of a relationship or dynamic or pattern, and it's all happening unconsciously, but this is the curriculum that you and I have been talking about, what we need to solve for the X factor, right? And to reboot the relationship, and the reason I came up with reboot relationship, kind of like your computer, right? Your computer, when you first buy it, it's functional, it works, you push, start, it turns on, you turn this. But over 5, 6, 7 years, right, in relationships, and if you haven't downloaded the 1.0, 2.0, 3.0 upgrades, downloads, what's going to happen? Your computer begins to freeze up, you go into that the spin wheel of death, you get frozen, you're in this gridlock, and now the computer that worked great now is like frozen, and you're like stuck in this emotional gridlock, and you never get beyond it because you haven't, and your partner and the people around you haven't taken the time to really go, okay, what is really going on here so we can begin to download new context, language, tools, resources, love maps, knowing, okay, what's your dream, what's my dream, what's your fears, really getting authentic and raw and vulnerable, and that's what we need to learn as men, too, take the mask of the masculine off And because we got to understand that there is this wounding of the patriarchy, the masculine, and we've all hurt each other, this mutual injury that goes on. Not intentionally, we're all trying to be, have good hearts here about it, but there's a process.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense, but that also creates something we discussed earlier, an incredibly dangerous dynamic.
Yeah, the drama triangle.
Right? Where you have now, with our time together and doing this show and what we do, now I want to be present constantly, right?
Yep.
And I want to give as much as I can give. When that dynamic shifts in my personal relationships, I also have to be prepared for people who see my boundaries as hard, fast, right? That's the wall.
Right. Well,
And because they're so used to me being this open, honest, caring individual that you've helped me create, right?
Yeah.
Through our time here.
yeah. Well, this is where whenever we create change within ourselves, right? It's it's like, okay, the Marines have landed, and we've trained people. We train people from birth to death, how to treat us with our own porous boundaries. And boundaries are really good, right? So boundaries are two things. One, a boundary can be to protect us from the world, quarantining it, keeping the good stuff in, the bad stuff out. That's a boundary, quarantining it. Your skin is like a boundary. Let's in the light, let's in the air, let's in the food, but it also... So boundaries can be very good and healthy and hard, And so maybe along the way, we've trained people to expect certain things of us, and now all of a sudden, there's a new sheriff in town, and we just nailed the 33 Theses to the door and said, this is our new religion, and this is who I'm going to be going forward. And they're not going to like it. It's kind of like, that's kind of because now they're hitting not a wall. So the boundary is, I'm going to protect myself from the world, or I'm going to protect me from the world, right? So it's two things. It's the internal boundary and an external boundary. So that's that, right? So, and then you have, again, that one up position, one down position. And the one up position sometimes is that position of, again, the rescuer or the perpetrator, which is also grandiosity, right? We're like, I'm the hero, I'm the boss, I know what's best for you. You don't know what you're doing, you don't know what you're thinking. And then the one down is the victim is in a sense of powerlessness and helplessness or shame or fear, right? And so we're constantly popping down to shame. I'm not good enough. I'm not able to measure up. I can't connect. I'm frustrated. We get stuck in that vicious cycle of confusion, frustration, fatigue. I can't connect. I'm trying to make all these things occur and work out. And, I'm trying to work towards this resolution, restore, repair, and reconciliation, get it back to good. But it doesn't go, because in relationship, it's the good, the bad, the ugly. Sometimes things go bad. And so you want to resolve that. But when bad stays bad, it stays ugly because there is no reparation or repair back to good, right? That's the ugly.
So again, the opposite of the pearl.
The opposite of the pearl, where the other person may
fester and
let the irritant, right? So they're spitting it out, like they're spitting out the hope that could be there to resolve the problem. So by withholding resolution, by withholding love, by withholding that ability to reconcile and to get to the reparation, reconciliation, any relationship, that's part of the vicious cycle. And what's driving that is maybe your fear of loss or abandonment, rejection, and not getting resolved, or it's their fear of loss, but you get this, there's a payoff, right? The payoff is, I win, you lose, you're right, I'm wrong,
right?
I'm right, you're wrong. Domination, avoiding domination, superior, inferior, that type of dynamic keeps going on, which ultimately takes us out of one really important thing, and it's all we do in coaching and therapy, and this is one of the hardest things for any of us to learn, is that this is all about personal responsibility. Because what is the impact and the cost of, so this is what we got to understand about the drama triangle, that the participants in the drama triangle create misery. It creates, for themselves and others. And I always say, well, there's misery.
I feel less than, I want to die, whatever the vicious loop is.
Right.
When in fact, And I've said this, which I thought I was living to in my relationships, period, which is everything is a 50-50 proposition, period. Even with my daughter,
Right.
I truly believe it's a 50-50 proposition.
Right. And what you're saying is actually true, because in my relationships, in all my relationships with people, I'm always trying to find I need to take 100% responsibility for my 50%, right? Where the prosecutor or the persecutor or the villain, they're saying you're 100% responsibility for 100% of the problem. Or the victim will say, you're 100% responsible for my pain and suffering. And the rescuer is saying, I'm 100% responsible for 100% of the relationship. So we're all disavowing. And so the impact of that's going to be what, Lee? What's the impact of this? Because the goal here is we want to transform this lose-lose dynamic into creating a more positive outcome for you, relationships, your business, your coaching,
It's creating the inequity.
It's creating, yes.
And ultimately, what you're telling me and what I'm reflecting is it creates an inequity.
It creates an inequity, an imbalance. It creates an off-balance thing, and nobody wants to be, I've been in relationships, and that tends to be a pattern, right? And so you can't, and even being, no one wants to be in a relationship with a therapist or a coach, right? I want to be the husband. I want to be the father. I want to be the friend. I don't want to be the therapist, right?
All right, that's hilarious. That's the funniest thing you've said today.
Nobody.
Who wants? Nobody. Because there's always an inequity. You know more than me.
But that's
explain those words to me. Explain what you said, right?
Right.
It gets tiring from my perspective of just be you.
Right, just be you.
I'm involved with you as a friend or whatever. Just be you.
Let's come alongside and face these dragons together and name and tame and work through it, so that we are in a co-created partnership, leapfrogging up that mountain together. Not that you have your strengths, I have my strengths and values, and we have our clashing personalities at times. We're both alpha male, but we have to learn to also, as adult, functional adults in all of these relationships, is several things. One is the idea of being nuanced. And when I say nuanced,
that's a big word for me.
Well, nuanced means,
I don't own that.
It means I'm flexible, right? It's that when it's kind of like when the tiger comes in the room, you're fierce, right? As a warrior, you're fierce. You're either going to kill that thing, protect your lovers, friends, keep everybody safe, or you flee. Or nuances when there's a little baby, you're tender, you're holding it, you're nurturing it. When the baby's hurting, crying, you give it comfort. And when it's your woman, you're nurturing and loving, and you're compassionate. You're there to, provide that sense of, because her deepest psychic craving is always going to be, and the $96 million question for all of us really is, are you there for me? Can I count on you? Do you have my back? Do I matter? Am I important? Are you accessible? Are you engaging? Are you responsive? Right? That's part of the nuance of being in, and also with your business people, like the people that are your clients. They're asking the same question. Are you there for me? You got my back? Yes? No? If it's yes, you got their business. If it's no, and you're running another pattern or uncertainty, they're going to go somewhere else. Right? Okay. And same thing in your relationships.
So I have to ask. Just my basic understanding of psychology and marketing and what I know.
Right.
People say you don't really know the person for 2 to 3 years into a relationship before they really drop their guard. When you really drop your guard at the beginning, like you are really authentic from the beginning, right? And you're creating, this is who I am, and then you do something that's completely out of the norm.
Right.
Especially in short-term relationships.
Right.
You also have to be prepared for dramatic changes in your partner, right?
Well, yeah, because when you're entering into a relationship in the very beginning, that's when you have the greatest level of certainty and sense of safety, and you kind of feel like, but it's a false trust, because you haven't earned trust. Trust is something you build over time and experience. But when we give away trust too quickly or too soon, then guess what happens? Then you're supposed to be the safe haven and secure base, and all of a sudden you have a bad day, a really bad day. And now all that false sense of security, because it hadn't been really tested in the crucible of that relationship, you end up repeating the same vicious cycle, but you have to have two powerful people that are accommodating, adjusting, and leaning into that third pole to break through those upper limit barriers because you go from a sense of certainty, safety, security, these are 6 core human needs, and you create a lot of uncertainty now about that love, connection, belonging, and your contribution. People get scared, and you trigger a fear response, or the circuitry of the nervous system, the amygdala, or that emotional part of your brain, hijacks the thinking brain going, I thought I knew you, I don't know who you are, you're this crazy guy, blah, blah, and they start running away, running a pattern of that fear, and their circuit, they're not able to hit the circuit breaker and to resolve it, and so they stay stuck, and then you're feeling powerless to try to resolve it, right? So these patterns ensue and become part of that the one up, one down type of relationship dynamic. And you can see that in pretty much any of your relationship. And if that's happening, our Reboot Your Relationship intensives.
What's the phone number?
310-560-0726.
Look at the bottom of the screen, by the way. I know I zoomed in on Joe, but I got tired of just bobbing my head up and down, and really this is about Joe. So
no, it's about us. It's about the we.
I get that.
It's about the collective mind share of all of us together.
I don't think people care about my drama. I think they care about you and what you can bring to them, and that's why this is about you. But let's go further.
But your drama is amazing. It's the curriculum I need to work through, It's like, hey, you got some content.
So
here.
there are multiple truths. Yes. We are at Crisis on Infinite Earth, basically.
Right.
I know I've been watching it, and I'm going to get it in.
And we're making machines, so...
So, because I had this situation come up with my ex recently, right? I'm not disputing what she's saying about me.
Right.
They are truths to her.
Right.
Well, and they might even be actual truths. Right. So I can learn from that. I can reflect that to someone of your caliber. By the way, phone number at the bottom of the screen.
Right.
And go, hey, this is what she's saying. Is this true about me?
Well, here's the thing. Again, we're talking about, you're talking about truths, okay, perceptions of reality. And yes, it's one of the core things for, women have that core need emotionally to feel that you validate their reality and their experience, right? Their reality experience, because we all have our own reality and our own experiences. Does it make it truth? Well, like you said, it's true for them from their experience. And to come alongside and to validate them and to understand, hey, you make sense to me, right? That sense of validation. You make sense to me, without getting defensive and going, what the, you're just being crazy, which I hear all the time, those labels, okay?
You're crazy, and you're a psychopath, you're a sociopath, you're a this, you're a that.
Right, all these comparisons, right? And comparisons are the root of suffering and a thief of joy. So that's going to be the thing that we get all these comparisons about. So instead of stopping and slowing things down, observing, processing, and doing reality testing, perspective checking, because you're hurt, I'm hurt, we're hurt, we're both in this hurt, pain, fear cycle dance, and you got to stop. You got to stop the cycle and say, I got to take a time out for me. I love you. Let's just come back and reset and try to work through this, but having another lens on it, because this is really super important that we are all learning as each player we're all in particular playing this mind game, and it begins by assuming that there are some archetypical roles that we are also playing: the victim, the rescuer, and the persecutor. Okay, now here's a shock for you, Lee. There are 6 people in every relationship. Okay?
I can't wait for this one.
Okay, because you're talking about perception, right? Okay, so first, there's you, right?
Yep.
He's over here to my right. You can't see him.
I am. Wait, okay. Hold on. Just for everybody on video, I'm right here, but I'm watching all the video. Episode was so important.
Right. Because there's 6 people. There's you, right?
Okay.
How you view you, your reality, your experiences, your past, your pain. That's your experience. That's you. How you view you. How you view me.
Okay.
How you're experiencing me.
I hear that.
How I'm showing up for you, and how all your projections and all your hurt and pain, and how you're like, you're now this bad guy. There's no bad guys. And then there's me, how I view myself with all my subjectivity and my hurts, pain, suffering. And then there's me, how I view you. Okay, now we got 4. I'm viewing you. Look at that guy he's in his crazy vortex, whatever. Judgment, perception, all these things. And we don't, and so now we start getting all these cognitive distortions of disqualifying the positive, this polarization of black and white, all or nothing, this overgeneralization, all these cognitive distortions. I can give you a list of them. There's about 50 that we continue to we play this game and project onto that person. And now the two other people here, there's the reality, who we are without all those stories and projections, who we truly are as a human being. As 2 broken people trying to work together and to solve things. There's who you truly are and who I really am. And that's colliding. So I always say we're broken 3 ways, right? Within myself, my I, your I, and then we also have this other part where we're broken as a we. That third person's a we, right? And that's the other part that is really transformative when you can understand that we're broken relationship, we're healed in the context of relationship, and we keep running this game. Because here, the one down position with, let's say, that one that goes to that feeling of powerlessness and helplessness and shame and pain and hurt, that's that helpless, there's that victim is saying, and I don't like using the word victim, but it's the drama triangle. But that person who's hurt, okay, it's really hard for them to see how they're also contributing to the pattern and the problem, because there's that feeling of there's nothing I can do, nothing I can say to change the situation or this person. That's another control thing, right? So, again, the impact is now we're denying responsibility for their own negative circumstances and situations and deny possession of their own power and freedom to choose something different and to change that. And then they do less than 50% and won't take on a stand, or they're super sensitive about stuff. And rightfully so, but it's learning what is that sensitivity about and wanting everyone to take off the kid gloves so that, and pretend that they're impotent and incompetent, because they were little children with adults, who were incompetent giants telling them that they were always wrong. And they learned to take that on, giving away power, hustling for all that we want, right? Love, acceptance, approval, validation, significance, belonging, negotiation, leaning in. That was not possible, right?
If I do this, I get this.
If I do this, I'll get that, right? So I got to do this. So give away power.
Now it's transactional.
And the hustle is transactional.
Yeah.
It's that pleasing and pretending, putting the mask on,
right?
Okay, instead of being authentic and
Mommy,
vulnerable.
Daddy, love me.
Just love me. Just accept me.
Just love me and tell me I'm okay.
Just love me, accept me, tell me I'm okay. I'm okay. You're okay. Please tell me I'm okay. Because if you're not okay, I'm not okay. And I got to make you okay. If you're okay, I'm okay. But we're all okay here. It's just that we got to understand that there's some other pattern being run that's creating this vicious cycle and dance. Right?
Right. So let me tie this all up into a big bow. Have you gotten all the technical stuff out of the way before I get to a couple of practicals?
I got 2
Do
more.
some
I just
technical.
got to go through the rescuer.
Do it!
The rescuer is, okay, they're coming at this, they're constantly applying some short-term repairs or, they're trying to fix, I hear this all, I'm trying to fix that person, this victim's problems, right? Which creates a lot of resentment in a relationship while neglecting their own self-care needs, right? So you try to save the whole world, losing your own soul, you're depleted. It's kind of like a fireman, right? A fireman is a rescuer, so they're taking care of everyone else's house that's burning down. Their house is burning down, so I go to take care of their house. It's burning down. I'm a first responder in my past. I still am in a lot of ways because I deal with crises and relationships and trauma. But their house is burning down, and they're neglecting your own house, right? And now your fire is on my house, and my house is burning down. But I'm still neglecting my house and my home and my business and my people I love to keep them safe and protected. And now I'm taking care of your house and your home, and it's burning down. And now you're doing nothing to the victim's doing nothing to put out the fire. Or yours is going down and they're not coming alongside you to help you put out your fire, right? Because that's the community, that's the tribe. We're all in this together, right? So they're always working hard to help other people. And you, as a husband or wife or business person or partner in any relationship, if you find yourself stuck, you find yourself in that same as initiating, and they're receiving and accepting it. They're doing the acceptance. You're giving it, and then all of a sudden you're like, hey, I have to take care of myself now, and now they're pissed because you're setting a boundary. Okay, and it might be coming out of I do want to make distinctions later on about boundaries and rules, because boundaries are healthy boundaries. Rules are operating out of a wound or a fear. And so you set these rigid rules, and it's always no. And no is, if you're always saying no to things, that's a rule.
I need you to change.
No, I need you to change, right. And instead of going, let's figure this out together and negotiate and co-create something where it's powerful for both of us to be in this relationship.
Let's stop right there, because it's important, because that goes back to practical examples for me. The correct terminology would be, hey, this doesn't work for me. Can you do X, Y, Z? Okay. Would that bother you? Is that... Again, we go back to the same word that we started episode 0 with, which is be present, express your real emotion.
I mean, you're saying something that's really important and true. It's how do you set the table for the other person to sit down and eat, right? Because if you're saying, hey, this food doesn't work for me, what you just cooked, well, then I'm going to take that like...
Let me give you a practical example on that.
So you can say, well, let me just circle this up. Because when you start with leaning in, understanding, and validating, and gratitude, and you're saying, hey, I am so grateful for everything you're trying. I see what you're doing here. And, you took all that time and energy to make this meal for me and to sit down and eat. You created all this time, quality time. I wanted to just ask for some reasonable accommodations here, that I'm allergic to lima beans and bananas, and you keep feeding me lima beans and bananas, and I can't eat lima beans and bananas. And, can we talk about this? Right. But you keep feeding me lima beans and bananas, right? So you hear that there's this setting the table. You can hear the grace and the gratitude and the compassion. I see your good. I see your innocence and not your guilt. However, let me coach you here. Confront that, be more assertive, and then let's co-create something that is a shared thing, right? Because that's where rescuers tend to need to become better at coaching rather than rescuing. And then they're usually, a lot of times, rescuers, like, we can get angry, like exploding doormats, because we're constantly pleasing, pretending, proving, perfecting, making sure. And that's another form of control out of our own feeling of, for me to feel worthy and loved, I need to make everyone okay, right? And that becomes, you get angry and you become that exploding doormat.
And I've heard this.
Right.
It's the age-old debate of, if you were served a bad meal, what would you say?
Right.
Right?
What would you say?
Well, I would say, I appreciate this, I appreciate that, this just doesn't particularly work for me. And depending on who you interview, and I've heard this a million times, as a foodie, I would just tell them I don't like the food.
Right.
Really? You don't believe in the care and the time they put into the food, the table setting, the setting of the room.
That's right.
Right?
You're ignoring and disqualifying all the other
right.
Everything else that was contributed to you and served to you out of
the
love.
The care and the love.
The care and the love, right?
You tried.
Right. And so the rescuers now they're acting, they get into this kind of loud or quiet martyr type. Now they become the powerless victim, the powerless, helpless victim.
So how likely, based on me possibly being a rescuer.
Right, you are.
I am.
All right. And you're a fighter.
So what are the odds that when somebody trips this circuit on me, I just set fire to the room and go, fuck you?
Well, that's... Right, because what's happening internally for you when someone rejects what you're offering?
Right, because I know every second I put into the care and that love.
Right, and you feel rejected and abandoned, and that might
and then trigger the trauma, and then the cycle begins.
Right, so find the trauma, find the wound, and you'll find where you need to heal. Because what they're saying, because people like that, rescuers tend to have a trauma, abandonment, grief, and trauma. And they get into that trauma, the swirl, right? The shattering of self and not good enough and the withdrawal, kind of like this opiate drug, internalizing that same story. I'm not good enough. I'm not. The rage. I start raging out or rage in.
I don't do that at all.
Not you.
Not me.
But because you feel this pain, right? Well, you're a fighter, right? You're a fighter.
Yes.
Because you've been trying to take care of you being the rescuer, right? Now you're taking on all this pain because it's your pain, it's your hurt, and you're the rescuer. You just want to be gotten because you want that other person to rescue you too, because that's just your projection. You're doing what you want other. It's like the love language, right? You're doing what you want. You're speaking a language that you want other people to interpret and translate, but they're not speaking your language. So you get angry and you rage. Okay, now. Have you ever hit in a wall and busted and pushed a hole in the wall?
Many times.
When I have clients do this, I say, I want you to go to that wall. I want you to stare and look as long as you can at that wall. And because that hole represents something symbolically that you could not communicate or express emotionally or relationally about your pain, abandonment. You have so much, you feel so much pain, then you go from rescuer to victim, and then you're not going to stay victim because then you go to the persecutor, the prosecutor, the blamer, the villain. Now I'm punching holes in walls because that message, the dance. You're the persecutor, right? Now you're not, because that's another place, because these are moving parts, right? You're not always in one place, but you have an entry point or a doorway that you walk through first. So as a rescuer, you want your heart to be seen as good. See my innocence, not my guilt. I'm trying to help. But then persecutors go into the blame game, and you're the problem. And the victims, and then they criticize and they put down, and then and then there's all this enabling behavior and problem, and they get critical and unpleasant, and they're good at really fighting and finding fault, and instead of finding the good, they're finding the bad, and then they oftentimes feel inadequate underneath these. It goes because the persecutor, they go to that grandiosity, that one-up position, and either get really boundaryless or they wall off like a turtle, either hailstorming or turtling up here, pulling into their shell, because they're trying to avoid this one very core, deep emotion, and that's shame. And shame is corrosive, is because that shame, the belief that we believe about ourselves and about when we have shame and experiencing shame, we believe that we can't change or there is no possibility for change. And so we bounce down to shame, and then we bounce up to the grandiosity and become either the rescuer, the perpetrator, or the persecutor. And we're constantly going in between those two things instead of being healthy, nuanced, flexible, and they are able to kind of relax, be gentle, humble, yielding, relax in the body. We get really tight, and we begin to fight, right? Or flee, or freeze in that moment. And that's really painful, but that's where, they can feel very inadequate or shame, like I'm not enough, and to cover up that shame. Because anger can be healthy, but it's also usually what's underneath the anger is, the anger can be secondary, where that feeling of shame or inadequacy or I'm not good enough or not measuring up, or that story that we learned as little kids with our incompetent giants around us telling us we're not good enough, right? And then they control with threats and try to control and use order and rigidity and tightness. And then they get loud and quiet and stonewall and avoid. Stonewalling, by the way, is the ultimate form of domination. So really? The impact, it's dominating because there's no repair.
You're actually validating my ex at this moment.
That's you've been stonewalling her? Or you've been trying to
That's what the entire last year of our relationship was.
Right.
Right? Just shutting down and disconnecting.
Well, by saying, there's two types of relationship silence, right? One that serves the relationship. It says, I love you. I
wish I could say,
I need to take a time out, a heart, hit the circuit breaker.
So this is where you're a depressed person who needs medication, or you need to fix you.
No, you're trauma. You have hurt and pain and trauma. You've never learned to solve the calculus problem. Still using old, antiquated, skills. emotional skills that don't work in adult relationships. It doesn't work that way, right?
So she's right.
Right, she is. So, but the other
hopefully
part,
she'll never watch this.
So there's that part of the relational ability to lean in and connect and stay connected through the conflict, right? Because that's what we're here to heal, and that's our transformation in those moments. Now, the other relational silence, which is the silent treatment, and the stonewalling, which is is like a form of abuse and violence and domination, because then there is no resolve, there is no repair. And the other person can't read your mind, doesn't know what's going on, and so they're protesting.
They're guessing.
They're trying to
especially
guess. And now there's
can
no
you
ability.
add in the digital age of adding text and being able to email with direct communication, which that's a real thing right now that's different than, say, a relationship from 10 years ago.
Right, and that's the technology and the evolution of that, where people can go cold, they can ghost, because I always say sometimes love's a ghost town.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a circus, sometimes it's a dead end. Those strategies and those paths don't work. You got to find a way to get to a safe, secure base so that you can all work towards that together, right?
So wait, before you go to the next section, again, how do people reach you?
310-560-0726.
If you're watching the video, look at the bottom of the screen.
And also you can email me directly at joe@rebuildingconnection.com. And
fortunately for me, right, I'm able to spend time with you and be able to do these amazing shows.
Right.
And so now my relationships are totally different, right? Like I'm going to be present from the beginning, right? So my relationships out of the gate with everybody who's around me, including my daughter at this moment, just think I am the squishiest warm blanket that ever existed. Trying not to get emotional, and I'm glad I'm not on camera. But the reason I say that, yeah, it's true. But the reason I say that, right, I learned from my ex, right? I learned what she had to say.
Right.
I learned that my business relationships were completely out of hand.
Right.
Right? I learned that my friendships were completely out of hand.
Unworkable,
right? They were transactional. Everything in my life was based on this transaction, right? So
why do you think that
did you get all your technical data in?
No.
All right, so let's go practical example. I'm going to do this. I'm glad I'm not on camera. Let's go with my friend who came down here. We talked about it, episode 0, right? Who was injured, right? Instead of me being aware of her dilemma, right? And being aware of how she felt, right? I decided to record a podcast that, based on her trauma, put her in a bad situation, right? I wish I would have thought further into it, right? Everything at this moment would be totally different. I truly believe that, right? After spending literally a week of trying to repair her and protect her.
Playing rescuer.
Yeah. But ultimately, and here's where I'm so glad I'm not on camera, right? I did something indirectly that injured her, that caused her to literally flight reaction. I'm sure you've had experience in your own life with a lot of flight reaction in your own life, right?
Right. When that trauma, when you get triggered there.
When you hit that button, I want to go home. I've had enough. Right? So tell me how to fix that for them. Like, how, as a human being, how aware do I have to be of everybody else and their feelings and what they're going through if I'm really going to have relationships with people?
Right. Well, it's all part of our own curriculum too, right? I'm 100% responsible for my 50%.
Correct.
So so when that dragon gets raised, right? When that dragon raises and has anyone like dangling over the cliff in the terror, or maybe the high tides and the low tide comes and the terror of that low tide, or feeling overwhelmed, or you get into that flight, that whole trauma loop that we get into, and that cycle. It's to stop and hit the reset button, and we're all responsible for our dragons. Now we can come alongside and help name and tame and slay that dragon, because as a friend or as a partner can say, hey, I see, Because we all also have to realize that our mirror neurons in our brain, we're always picking up on stuff all the time, constantly, and we have this affect contagion, and we can absorb all that energy around us and go, ooh, there's something wrong here. And it's not you necessarily, it's just this is what we're taking on and repeating in our trauma, right, in our looping, in our
Is it
trauma bonds.
always about the inequity?
No, it's not always about the inequity.
But it seems to be, I just hearing what you're saying today.
I mean, it's part
My
of
greatest fear is always, you're here, we're talking, we're open, and then somebody drops, and then boom.
But you got to remember what I said. There's, in the very beginning, there are multi-dimensions and layers to human conditions and relationships. Many, many, many dimensions. And it's not just one. It's not just the inequity. It's other things, too. You know, you could be equal. And what could that cause? Power struggles. Now you're clashing because you can't find a shared space and be flexible. You're more inflexible, right? Because you both are equals, you know, and you're both having a power struggle. That's a different type of conflict than, you know, a one up, one down relationship. Now it's two people that are alpha. You know, I deal a lot with people in marriage and that run marriages or businesses, and they get into these two people that feel they're right and they're competent, and so there's not a lack of it's not an inequality. There is an equality here. It's just, where are you willing to be flexible? And again, going back to because there's this little part of the middle here where there's an inflexibility. Again, a fixed way of being. That's the power struggle, right? It's the immovable object and the unstoppable force, you know. And, you know, who's controlling who? The immovable object, are they controlling? Sure, because they're always saying no and they're immovable. The unstoppable force, are they controlling? Yeah, I mean, everyone's controlling everybody, right? Everyone is controlling another person in one way or another. And until we create awareness, one, and acceptance of how that pattern continues to keeps showing up. Because I'm an alpha guy, but I have also had to learn to be flexible and nuanced, right? I've had to learn that, you know, it's, you know, like the military, you know, you can't, when you take an island in the military, you have to take the beach. But it's not just the Air Force or Army or Marines or Navy. You got to take it by air, land, and sea, and you all have to work together to take on this island, right? Whether it's your business or your relationship, the negotiation. We're all trying to work together as perfectly imperfect human beings, and we have to learn the curriculum. And we've got to understand what is occurring within us that's blocking our evolution and our own transformation. Like I said, the war in the world will not be, we can't heal the war in the world until we heal the war between the sexes. And we can't heal the war between the sexes until we heal the war within ourselves. And that's going to take, you know, we've got to create a sense of where each of these archetypes, players, persons, whatever, sometimes there's got to be an alternate or a switch, you know, be able to switch roles here where during the course of any game or a course of any situation. Now, I love the drama triangle because it was created for sports, working with sports players, and also in business. So they use a lot of this in business. That's why I like, because you're in a business and this is, we're working in the business of relationship and relationship business. For example, rescuers who gets maybe changing this up a little bit, a rescuer is pushed too far by, let's say, the villain or the persecutor, right, will switch to the role of a victim, right? They become the victim, or they counter the persecutor or the prosecutor. Victims, you know, begin to depend on a savior, some hero, somebody to rescue them. And then rescuers are yearning also for, you know, because they're looking for the basket case, the one that they need to go solve all their world problems, because it takes the focus off of what they need to do that. And then the persecutors need a scapegoat. They need someone to blame, right? These are the patterns that continue to get emerged. So while a healthy person getting in that health thing where they're nuanced, flexible, you know, working through all those things, will perform in each of these roles in different ways. But the pathological role players that are fixed in that dominant role actively avoid leaving and the familiar and comfortable environment of that game. They've kind of become, again, that these binary positions that are fixed ways of being, instead of being flexible and leaning into that third pole and whatever. And that's one thing we can talk. How do you create that third pole that is a mutual? Here's where we're going. This is what we stand for, fight for, our higher purpose. This is what we're moving through and championing. This is who we are. We are. So that's where, and and there's a lot of stuff you can see even in politics, right? You can see. I'm not going to name names because I'm apolitical, but the misfortune of others that have befallen them. Like there's even in my relationships where I can be the rescuer and then become the victim and then become the perpetrator, and I'm trying to stay away from that drama triangle and move it into a more, we can create, and we'll do another segment on how do we move from the drama triangle into an empowered triangle of where the rescuer again is more of a coach, right? And the persecutor, okay, what's going on here, so you can be more assertive and be more of a type of a challenger, right? Rather than putting someone down, or instead of being the victim, to be again the creator and the author of your own life, taking on that responsibility, because that's where in each of these cases the drama triangle is really an instrument of destruction and devaluation, and that's the pain that we see in the world and everywhere. If you were to really take a look at everything around us, that's what's occurring. And the only way to escape the drama triangle is to function as an adult, to participate in the game, being on the court, owning, taking personal responsibility for how you're initiating that or accepting that, and what you're laying down and receiving. Because a lot of times I allow a lot of things in my life being a rescuer, but then my house is burning down and I have to set some boundaries, bottom lines, and now I'm the bad guy, right? You're not. You just have to realize that you have to start setting internal boundaries and external boundaries earlier on and managing expectations, because expectations, again, without consent creates more resentment, and this downward, it's kind of like this vortex you're both getting sucked into, right? Absorbed into. And we got to break through these patterns, really, and it's important steps that we can take.
So let me give you the last example.
Yeah.
Business.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
I emotionally poured my heart, my soul into an individual that I've known for 12 years, completely platonic. And I thought, business-wise, this is the right fit for me, right? And I gave her the new version of Lee, which is not the version she knew.
Right.
And then I set a boundary, right?
How hard did you set the boundary?
We've had this discussion. It was pretty hard, right?
Yeah, you set a hard line.
Hard.
Right.
This is
hard.
Gordon Ramsay style hard.
So how did that come across then as? How did she receive that?
Work it out, right? It was, for the sake of discussion, for all of you listening or watching Joe at this moment, let's just go with, this is the sign up. Do it, make it happen.
Right.
And when it didn't happen, I lost the client and I lost the partner. Because in both cases, emotionally, that for whatever reason, they could not handle it, right?
Or they couldn't handle it, or you couldn't?
I have no issue with what I did.
Okay.
But again, as a rescuer, here's what I'm hearing today. As a rescuer, I don't have a problem even going back to the case of my other friend. When you decided to go, part of me went, that's the last time I'm going to see you. And I'm okay with it.
So why are you okay with that?
I'm not. And you already know this.
But you say you're okay with it.
Because...
But you're not okay with it.
When you make that motion of, hey, good for you for making a definitive action, because, okay, we're going to go back to trauma, right? Which is, I already know that if I do something where I set a hard boundary for myself, I know I'm not going to get love or respect or emotion or money or anything back from this situation. And I am prepared to take the hit for saying, no, this is not okay to me.
Right.
Right?
Okay.
Including my ex. I mean, for the sake of discussion.
Okay. Well, when you go into that particular role, right, again, how you set the table. is it a harsh startup or a softer startup? How does that, is it
Oh,
hard
it's a
line
complete soft start
all the way through, but then till the end it's
and
exploding.
maybe you understand this.
But then it becomes the exploding doormat, right? Because now you're coming across as this harsh boundary.
This is it.
Because, relationships, communication is a dynamic process of discovery. You both have to say, hey, this kind of hurt. I feel a little, can we talk about, negotiate, and find our third pole here? But when you start, you got to realize you're operating out of your own hurt and wound, and you're being, you're feeling abandoned, and no one's showing up for you, and you're feeling rejected, and it's not enough. Then you put that on them as, okay, and I get it. I mean, that's pain, right? That's hurt. That's disappointment. Okay, that's true. But we're all drowning, and it doesn't matter if you're drowning at 1 feet, 7 feet, 21 feet. You're drowning, and when she's drowning, maybe they're drowning, you're drowning. And, and so we all, as human beings are going to have to learn that, okay, rescuers are good at trying to rescue, and it's okay if they're at 1 feet of water, right? Okay, I can reach down and, but if it's 7 feet or 21 feet, you have to take a step back and reassess and do a triage on yourself and the situation.
But it really only takes 6 inches.
It only takes 6 inches or less. Sometimes, if you're a baby, an inch.
Right.
If you're face down, yeah. So it doesn't take a lot of water.
And I don't think people see this.
Right.
I really don't. I mean,
we don't, because it's hard to see the picture when we're in the frame.
Right.
You can't.
Right.
Because there's different. Okay. So there's different parts here of that window that you're looking through, right? And we have to embrace kind of more of this idea of acceptance, right? And looking through the window of tolerance and seeing the innocence and not the guilt of other people, right? Otherwise, we keep judging, right? Finding, the wrong. So we have one window here that is the window where, you can see it, I can see it. It's like the iceberg, right? The top level, it's observable. You can see it, I can see it. We both see what's observable. That's 5-10% of what you're observing. That's all you can see, that top 10%, right, of the iceberg. My behaviors, how I act, you can see them, I can see them, I can see it in the mirror. Okay. Then we have, so that's what's open, right? Then down here, we have the hidden part. You can see it, or I can see it, because it's within me, my fear, my shame, but you can't. You can't see what's underneath that. That's hidden. That's my shame, my fear, my pain, my anger, my past, my dreams, my longings. That part's hidden. Again, I see it, you can't. Then we have our blind spots, right? Or, it's like, where's the salt? And you can't, we have our blind spots. And so that's the part that I can see, or that you can see in me, but I can't. That is a blind spot that no one can see. That's the part where we don't know what we don't know. And so we keep fighting over those types of things instead of the humility and saying, okay, let me stay open and flexible and real and vulnerable. Even when you think you're
evolved and you've learned from the past relationships and you think you've...
Oh my God, I've been doing this 30 years. I still don't know what I don't know, and I still get impacted, and I have to stop and go, what am I not willing to learn here? What part of this am I not willing to learn? Am I being this rescuer again and repeating the same pattern because there's something else going on within me? So now you have these three, and now the bottom one here is what's unknown. You can't see it, I can't see it, nobody can see it. It's just that's the trauma, that's what gets reenacted over, and it keeps bubbling up to the surface, and you start going, that's it, And so we become these meaning-making machines and judgers and stories and, and looking for evidence for snakes and grass and, trying to find the tiger in the room, and there's no tiger, because that's where love and acceptance comes in, right? Can you grab me that vase right there?
Sure.
So let me give you we got to talk about some solutions now, because this has been going on. We'll probably have to cut this in like 3 parts.
No, it's all right. Keep going.
All right. So, okay. So it's like there's these, so Lee, as we're learning here, there's a learning curve, a huge learning curve for all of us in our own curriculum for life, love, relationships, business. And it's okay, right? Be gentle with
the
journey,
the only point of me doing this or anyone else is so that when I have a relationship like I do now, is so that the people that are in my life have a better experience with me, right? Doesn't matter if it's a daughter, it doesn't matter if it's a friend, it doesn't matter if it's romantic. Ultimately, I can't repeat the cycle.
Right.
Like at some point, even at 51 for me, and yes, I'm not on camera, go watch the video. The reality is it has to end.
Well, here's the thing. It is always going to reenact itself and replay itself. How you respond to X factor and how you get beyond it is what we always have to continue to learn to solve for X, right? So because we go through, it's like the hero's journey that you and I talk about. It's leaving the known world, right? That everything that you know. You only know that world, right? You're down this threshold, and you're stepping out of that threshold into the unknown world where, you're going to go through trials, tribulations. You're going to go through challenges, and you need a guide, in the hero's journey. You need a guide, a helper, someone to kind of walk you through. I've been in the pit of, and then you get into the abyss. It's like the part of the hero's journey. It's the phoenix rising, right? It's out of the ashes, the abyss, the shame, Dante's ninth hell. You got to go through all that. The raging against the dying light, your Lieutenant Dan moment, right? Where you guys ever watch Forrest Gump? Lieutenant Dan, where he's raging against the dying light with God, and he's like coming to terms with, his grief of his loss and, his legs and his life, and kind of getting back to that. And then the atonement, which is, again, the undoing of all that fear and shame that we learned as children and as adults, and we keep repeating, and it's return to love, right? The goddess or the relationship or whatever it is that you need to be, focusing on in those moments, right? So there's that part of that journey, and also recognizing that we're all here learning. Again, you don't know what you don't know in relationship, life, love. You don't know what you're solving for, calculus problem, right? The X. And so, like children, like your daughter, right? My kids, you, me, all of us, we come into the world, we're unconsciously incompetent. We don't like to be incompetent or unconscious, but we're unconscious and we're incompetent. Okay? That's the first step, right? Recognizing, okay, it's like your daughter, she doesn't know when she was 2 that she needed to know how to tie her shoe. I don't know how to tie shoes. I don't know what I don't know. My dad's doing it. I got Velcro. It works, right? So the thing here, Lee, is recognizing that, okay, on this journey, right, you have your ideal, your future version of you, right? Who you want to choose, who you want to be, okay? And then you have what's real, the ideal and the real, okay? And then between the ideal and the real, your calculus problem and my 5th grade level fractions, is this gap. And that is kind of like this frustration. And some of us, because we'll either ignore the ideal, the dream, the future version of ourselves, abandon that because shame says I can't change and be that anyway, and we just deal with it. I'm just stuck in this real pain and suffering, right? Or some people ignore the real, the pain, suffering, and the hurt, and only focus on the ideal, the future version, and will never look back here to see where they're missing something because that's too painful to take on, right? It's painful, especially when we're kind of blaming everybody. We had to learn to survive, and then we have this gap, right? So that's the gap between. So you come in unconsciously incompetent, and now you go, wow, now you're consciously incompetent. Now you don't know something, like tying your shoe, or writing a lease, or in a marriage or relationship. And what's that produce out of you? When you don't know what you don't, now you don't know something, you feel what? What do you feel, Lee?
Fear and shame.
Fear, shame, frustration, failure.
For me, it's always fear.
Fear, frustration, fatigue.
I don't want to be alone.
I don't want to be alone. I don't know how to do this. Frustration, right? Okay. And then you go, but your little girl, she's 2, 4 now. She goes, Daddy, I want to learn how to tie my shoe like so-and-so, right?
Right.
So you show her, you guide her, you teach her, you follow her, you parent her. You're the competent giant in her life, and you're showing her another way, right? Now she knows. Now she's competent, and she's consciously now competent. She moves from the conscious incompetence. Now she knows something. Now we're practicing this whole thing, right? Practicing tying the shoe, riding the bike, riding alone, selling a house, doing this relationship dance, moving past our patterns. Okay. And then, like, you're a fighter. You got all your fights, and you have all your degrees in all these things, and now you become unconsciously competent, which is the mastery. That's now you've mastered something.
Right.
And from birth to the grave, we are always learning, unlearning, and relearning how to work through some of these things, right? So we have to be aware that there's no shame in trying to learn how to work through, because all these patterns, they're going to show up in your business, your relationships, your love life, your children, your families. Certainly, one day, hopefully not, even Lee and I will have to work through our own little little vicious cycle, dance. I don't know. It's possible. We're both humans, right? But here's the antidote. I'm going to give you the antidote of all of this in a very simple way to think about this, right? It's about creating awareness, and it's also about creating acceptance of yourself and others. It's easy to love the enemy out there and to give compassion and empathy to the beggars and out there, but by a lot of times it's hard to love and accept when we discover that the enemy is in here. There is no love, no acceptance. When the beggar's in here, the one that's hurting, that's in here, and the one that's in pain's in here, there is no love, compassion, or acceptance. It's just anger, rage, you fool, name calling or whatever. And we don't realize we all need to get into the space of love and acceptance, right? So I asked Lee to bring my little vase here. Now here's the takeaway for you guys to practice. And I love this principle. It's called wabi-sabi love. In the Japanese culture, they have this practice. It's called the art of imperfection. Okay, I'm imperfect. Lee's perfect, but he's working on his imperfections. But with these vases, they get a crack in it, right? And they fade and they get old. And we're all broken. We all have these wounds and cracks and everything, right, Lee? So that crack's there. I have cracks. You got cracks. It's like Rocky said, hey, Adrian, I got gaps. You got gaps. We're going to fill each other's gaps, right? So what are we going to fill that with, right? Adrian and Rocky. That's where we're going with this. So that crack.
I wish you would have used any other analogy because he actually got smarter as the movies went on. But I digress. Go ahead.
Well, but that's part of the evolution, right? He grew.
That's not how brain trauma works.
Sorry. I see. No, I know that.
We had this discussion on Fight Net Radio. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, that's a good point, though.
Oh, my God. The guy actually got smarter with brain trauma.
We'll talk about TBI later.
Oh, my God.
Brain injury. But again, I
get the point.
It's Japanese, right?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for validating my point.
Absolutely.
So we got this crack. So what do the Japanese do? In our society, we were talking about this the other day about disposable relationships, right? We just dispose of it. We get rid of it.
I'm done.
I'm done. I'm done. It's broken. Throw it away. Discard it. Dispose of it.
Instead of...
So what they do is they take 24 karat gold and they put it, and you can find pictures of wabi-sabi vases, wabi-sabi love. So love is the gold that we put into these imperfections, right? Lee's really good at seeing that in other people and putting that into their cracks, right?
You're very kind.
And then when he doesn't like it anymore, he throws it away.
I will probably throw it away, yeah.
But the idea here of love and acceptance, right? To see not just other people's cracks, but we have to see our own innocence and not our own guilt. We've got to see the innocence and not the guilt in others too. To put that 24 karat gold in there. And you know what they do with these vases? They put them into a museum and they shine a light on it to accentuate and actually honor those imperfections and cracks. Now, I'm
going to get emotional.
And you begin to go, look at the beauty of those cracks. And you find love and acceptance in that. And as people that are, as real estate people, all these things, appreciate the cracks. Now, if you're a real estate person and you're trying to sell a house with cracks, but we're not talking houses. We're talking about human beings, right? But we do that with houses and cars. I bought a new car, I get a scratch in it, I want to throw it away because it's got a scratch in it.
People are not cars.
We're not cars. We're human beings. We're people.
I can safely say this about the people I care for.
Yeah.
That's a powerful analogy.
Well, that is the antidote to our human suffering in a lot of ways, because all these comparisons that we make, a lot of you in the real estate business and fighting business and relationship business, we're always running a pattern around comparing. Again, comparisons are that one up, one down, right, wrong, significance, insignificant, superior, inferior. Those patterns are going to kill us as humans, because that is the root of suffering and a thief of our joy. And until we begin to learn to love and accept ourselves and others, again, it's not just self-love, because self-love only goes so far until I learn to other love and to other accept. And I'm not talking bad behavior, narcissism, abuse, addictions, violence. Those you have to have healthy boundaries on. Say, I'm going to have to love you from a distance. Go to AA, take an anger management, come back and we'll talk again. So I'm not talking those kinds. Abuse is never okay. Hitting, anger, okay, that's not the type of acceptance, love and acceptance I'm talking about, because that's where you have to do more loving you and accepting yourself and your value and your worth, and get into a safe community to work through all that, right? And that's what rebuilding connections about. That's what, rebooting your relationships, whether it's working with me as a couple or team, whatever we're doing here, is to find another way to remind ourselves that we all have the power and freedom to choose something very different, if we will. So thanks, guys. Anything you want to add, Lee?
How do they contact you?
310-560-0726. And my email is joe